Good morning, everybody. It's very wonderful to be in community together, not just with our spiritual family, but also with the moon this morning and last night, with the sunrises and the sunsets together. It feels like a very auspicious time to be in community and in spiritual community. And this morning we felt that we might mix things up a bit and live slightly more dangerously. I think if we're not pushing at the leading edge of the human possible, then what's the point, right? So we thought we'd live at the edge of our human possible by taking the theme of our talk this morning, which is the Zorro of Zen, and taking that as a way to respond to your questions. So we would like to field some questions from the community this morning. What is on your heart? What might have kept you awake last night other than the full moon? What is eating you? And these can be questions about your happiness and suffering, questions about our direction and path, real deep questions of the heart. And what we'll do is, I believe Brother Spirit has volunteered to be our scribe, and we'll collect a whole bunch of questions, and then they will be the ingredients for our sharing this morning. So as we listen to three sounds of the bell, this is an invitation to see what is there in our heart, what is not yet resolved, what is any stuck feeling we have, and any questions around those stuck feelings. So an exercise of tender and honest inner listening. So we have a couple of mics that we can pass around. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. And we always like to remind one another that the more pithy the question, the clearer it will be for everyone. A gentle reminder for the questions to be concise and pointed, if they can be. And the mics will come to whoever raises their hand. And if you have a wish to not be filmed, please just say so when you pick up the mic, and then we will have the camera on us and the question as it's written on the board, just in case, because we do film these sessions for archive purposes, so that we can enjoy them later, and so they can be also available to you later. So I think there was a hand over here somewhere. Oh, lots of hands. Okay. Questions are not going to be the problem. Let's over here. So maybe we'll start here and then we'll come to this side.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask about the wonderful talk that Brother Spirit gave on Monday about the Four Noble Truths, and the third one being about it's okay. Not that it will be okay, or it might be okay, or it could be okay, but it is okay now. And I'm struggling with that, and I was hoping that you might be able to reflect a little bit more on it, because even with the helpful clarification and reminder yesterday of ultimate truth versus conventional truth, I'm still struggling with that a lot. Thank
you. Is it okay? Is it okay? That is the question. Okay. Thank you. So we'll come this side.
Thank you. Oh.
Step one. Attachment to outcome. This idea of letting go of attachment to outcome, I get it in my heart because it feels like a bit of a relief to let it go. I'm finding it hard in my head to think about how to do that, because in a sense it's that attachment to that outcome that is very motivating, that helps to structure a lot of what I do, I suppose. And so thoughts on practically what does it mean to let go of that attachment to outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder how to be more present. I feel very present with the things that climate change is causing, and have more trouble in many ways being more present with the things that cause climate change, like fossil fuel companies and long commutes and things like that.
Thank you. And just to clarify in this question, being present for it, I'm guessing you mean in an embracing, compassionate way.
No, the suffering.
Being with the suffering.
That the things that climate change is causing suffering, the things that cause climate change also cause suffering, and I feel less present with those.
The roots. Okay, where's the microphone? Okay, so this is over here.
So my question is, I think when we're here in community, in the Sangha, it's on first names only and not really knowing what each other does. It feels very easy and possible to be open and to be motivated by love and to be finding joy. But when
Gabrielle, I think that it's not actually on. Maybe a long press so it goes green.
It's on green now. Okay, thank you. So it feels like here in Plum Village and in the Sangha, with first names only, and it feels like there's a great spirit of trust and love. It's very easy to find that love and joy and connection. But when the outside world starts to invade, it feels like already in just a few experiences I had yesterday that the kind of mistrust and suspicion and anxiety and fear start to leap back in, and also defensiveness. I notice myself in that place yesterday. And so it's how do we go from this trust and joy and deep connection, and how do we handle the mistrust and fighting and defensiveness that we encounter amongst each other in the outside world. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. This is on. Okay. This is a tag along to number 2. So it's not just how to let go of attachment to outcomes, but doing so without letting go of caring and idealism and thinking of a better tomorrow while being in the present. So without idealism.
Meaning that if we let go of our attachment to outcome, does that make us indifferent? And then we let go of our care and our idealism.
Yeah. So without becoming indifferent and letting go of idealism. Thank you, Brother Spirit.
Okay. Yeah. Just who's got the microphone? Actually, it's the microphone juggle.
I have a microphone.
It's an extension of... Sorry, did you want me to talk or not?
Okay, well, we'll just take this one first, and then it'll come to you. Yeah.
Sorry for barging in. My question is, I guess, how to allow the conventional and the ultimate truth to coexist? Because I think for a lot of us here, like our work and the way that we engage with climate is very much based on conventional truth. And so it does, mean thinking about like priorities, thresholds, numbers, and distinction between subject and object. So how do we, kind of allow the way we do that work to exist with everything that we are learning here without watering it down, I guess?
Thank you. We'll go there afterwards. First, we'll go here.
It's an extension of number 1, I think. Probably like many other people, when I was young and experiencing things that were definitely not okay, I had an authority figure telling me that it was okay. And now, in the midlife crisis of the most beautiful nature, I'm realizing how not okay that really was. And I've got an authority figure saying, it is okay. And that's bringing up lots of resistance for me. And I guess I'm asking about an elaboration on how to experience the suffering from the past and truly to honour the grief, the misery, the pain that wasn't honoured at the time because it was tricked into thinking it was okay. And it feels to me like the only way to do that is to completely give oneself, 100% of oneself to that pain and that misery. And this busy voice, mindfulness, saying, hello, welcome, stay as long as you want, is almost taking up space that needs to be completely absorbed by pain. I guess that's a bit more elaboration on that it's okay voice and how to not let it get in the way.
We could just enjoy the questions all morning, I feel. Okay, here.
Thank you for this wonderful format. I think mine's an extension of number 5. So specifically, if we're working in cultures that what's rewarded is kind of striving and interrupting each other and putting ourselves forward, but we want to have a commitment to letting go of striving and being present and allowing things to be as they are. But we know that that potentially comes at a personal risk of not being seen, our projects not getting funded, our work just disappearing, because we are allowing ourselves to kind of witness those violent cultures and no longer want to take part in them. But does that just mean that we just end up on the fringes of that culture, and like our agency is perhaps just to bear witness and to hold that violence? But that's a huge personal cost, and also really hard to do when you know that that might involve what you care about so much not being seen and not having a seat at the table. How do you navigate that? I would appreciate some answers on that. Freudian slip.
Without getting sidelined?
To distill that, are you asking whether if we show up in a different way, is that weaker?
Yeah, like if we choose a non-violent way, will we just end up invisible? Yeah.
If we choose a non-violent way, will we end up invisible and reduced to bearing witness and losing the seat at the table and the voice in the thing? And maybe the funding while we're at it. Okay, a bit more on this side, and then we'll come back over here.
Mine is one of the things we talked about the other day, but there's so much suffering in the world, always, everywhere. When homeless people outside my tube station, it's everywhere. And how I still struggle with how I can cultivate joy, as we've talked about, cultivate joy or relax or have some rest given that context. How is it okay, maybe the first question, how is it okay to have that space for myself when there is so much suffering? And even if I think in a consequentialist way, like, oh, I'll rest better and then I can work harder. But surely in that rest time, I could be helping. I still struggle with that, so.
So how is it okay to rest and touch joy when there's still so much suffering? Okay, a bit more this way. Where's the microphone? If you have the microphone, please hold it up. Okay, great. Okay, one here and then there. Yeah. Pia? Yeah.
Yes, hi. So my question is, what can you do if sadness or grief has accumulated for so long that when you look at it, it looks like the Himalaya? I don't know if that's clear already. Yes?
Thank you. What to do if the sadness and grief is so big? It looks like the Himalayas, utterly overwhelming, maybe too big to hold. Can actually, Brother Phap, could you make this another question? Could you make it another question, just for us? Himalayas. Okay, I think there was a microphone at the back here.
I'm struggling with how to stay mindful and present and safe in my body while having racialized interactions.
Okay, thank you very much. Microphone over here somewhere? Yeah.
Hello. I would really love to hear your advice for
the community on how we can engage in this work in a way that doesn't cause harm to ourselves and our bodies. I think this is the thing that I've kind of struggled with the most, and the question that I always come back to is when you have to kind of, for lack of a better term, like go into the belly of the beast and try to move the people that we want to move, the changes that we want to see happen. I've found in my experience that that often causes a huge rebound on me and my physical health and my well-being that's really difficult to mitigate. And I think that's something that we feel a lot in the space in general. It's really difficult to do this work in a way that doesn't cause really deep harm to ourselves. Thank you.
And has the microphone moved over here? Yes, okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this question partly relates to the discussion around agency yesterday. And it's very powerful to think of the ripening and the ripple effects of the love and the kindness and the good sort of deeds that we put out into the world or in our thoughts. I guess I'm curious around how we hold and reconcile that same process with more maybe negative consequences, and how that a lot of the time in daily life, the things that we do have both. So traveling here has some negative impact on the environment, for instance. And this is true of so many things in what it is to be human living in the world that we live in. So yeah, how do we kind of hold and reconcile that in living, we're also having negative consequences of different magnitudes, but as a relatively rich person in the scale of the world, we have consequences. And also, I was curious whether I'm feeling that in being very aware, sometimes it's almost overwhelming, a sense of just awareness. Like I was walking this morning and I was just looking at the trees and the sounds, but it was almost like difficult to hold that level of like sensory input. It felt so strong. And so I was just curious whether, how you almost like hold that level of like the intensity of really looking at something. And that just felt like, almost too much for my brain. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask questions until we run out of space. So I think we might have 2 more. Okay, 1 microphone here. It might need to be switched on until it goes green.
Is that right? Yes. In the context of interbeing, where does, and maybe what is the purpose of ego, and how do we manage that?
Okay, back this way. Where did the microphone make it to? Oh, here. Okay.
Thank you. I have a question about this morning's meditation. We sat with the concept of non-fear, and I was wondering what's the place of that in Buddhism and in your practice, and how we can deal with that in our daily lives.
Okay, where's the mic? There's one at the back, apparently. Please stand up.
Hello. Am I interrupting someone? We're here at a time of great balance. The equinox, the full moon, abundance around us. The stores are full. The squashes are piled high. It's a wonderful time to see Plum Village. I want to know what the approach of the family here is for the times ahead when, for want of a better phrase, the shit hits the fan. What happens here, and how are you visioning into that?
Brother Phap will respond. How? Okay. Okay, I think maybe 1.5 questions. Is the microphone here? Yeah.
No, still on this, is it okay to be okay? Like in the ultimate dimension, it seems to be okay, but when is it not okay in the conventional? How to overcome guilty? Are there like any Buddha's, sutras, reflections on it? Because I think, like, at least from the Western perspective and like Christianism, we carry a very strong guilty-based cargo in our backs. So it would be great to get some reflection on how to overcome it.
Okay, here, yeah. I think this will be the last one.
Lucky me. My question is, how do we foster allyship between other spiritual traditions, particularly those from indigenous communities?
Sister Hero might have something on this. I wonder, is she here somewhere? Okay, we'll see. Okay. I think we're going to have to. We've had a half an hour sounding of wonderful questions, and as we can feel in the nature of being true seekers, there is no end to the questions, which is good because the path is long. And as Christiana was saying, there may never be a time when all the questions are addressed, if you see what I mean. There may never be a time when all our work is done. We are, as a species, in an endless state of responding, cultivating, adapting, hopefully evolving. And so the questions will always keep coming. So as we hold in our hearts the questions we've heard, for many of us who didn't yet have a chance to ask our questions, we will have heard echoes of it in the questions that were expressed. And so we can hold these questions in our heart as we have a very life-saving sound of the bell for those of us up here. Brother Dao is asking, how many would you like? 10? So maybe one sound of the bell and some time of breathing as we see how we will navigate these waters. So, Brother Phap and I will navigate this together. One thing that we will be doing over the next hour or so is sharing from our own experience as practitioners. And sometimes we can have a tendency to think that like an answer or a theory is outside of us and we just need to kind of grasp it and then we've got it. We will share some of our like way of seeing the world and our way of kind of being in the world. And a lot of it is integrating that into actually how we act and respond. So I would actually first like to take the suffering as big as the Himalayas question. And how to be with that, because that may already have come up for quite a few of us just over the last few days, that when we start to feel, we sort of dissolve some of the numbness we might have been carrying, and it can be quite confronting to suddenly realize the level and intensity of the feelings in our heart, mind, and in our body. And I'm also someone who lives life intensely. And I also have had this experience of my suffering being as big as the Himalayas. And I learned something from one of my early mentors, Sister Gina, who's here in this hall this morning. And that was when I sort of said, but the suffering is so big, like, how can I approach it? How can my mindfulness even kind of be strong enough to sort of stretch around it? And she said something like, if you can't be if your mindfulness is not strong enough to embrace the suffering itself, your mindfulness does the next layer, which is, I embrace the feeling that the suffering is too big. So I embrace my limit. I embrace the fact that I can't embrace my suffering because it's too big. And if you can't do that, you embrace the fact that you can't embrace the fact that the suffering is too big. And I guess you could imagine kind of like an onion, and there are those inner parts of the onion that are quite fat, and then the outer layers of skin get kind of super thin. But we know that a super thin embrace is so powerful. The atmosphere is so thin compared to our planet, but it's so powerful. All we need is just a tiny thin film of space around our feeling in response to the overwhelm, and we already have a little bit more oxygen. We have a bit more oxygen and self-compassion for our limits. And this has really worked for me. And another thing Sister Gina said, another time when I was really suffering, which is quite often, and she said that large sufferings are always made of small sufferings. It's always made of composite parts. It can always be sort of broken down and handle the small bits of it, one piece at a time. And some of us, I think there's a natural human tendency to identify a bit with our dramatically terrible suffering. But if everyone knew what I know, or if everyone felt what I felt, this is the kind of suffering that has never been felt before. Or, there's an interesting identification that can happen with our suffering. It's like, what do you mean it can be broke down into composite parts? I found a resistance in me to do that. But I also found that it was possible to start to name out some threads in it. And even if I couldn't embrace the whole, there were some smaller parts of it that I could embrace. And to get really concrete, I think you mentioned, what was mentioned this morning was sadness and grief, and I think we could add despair in there. And really to get to the nuts and the bolts of the practice here, I think those of us that are busy problem-solving systemic challenges with our minds, we may also have a greater tendency to despair, because one of the roots of despair is the idea that there's an unsolvable problem. And our brilliant minds can't solve it. So then we have this tendency to fall into despair. In the Zen practice and in Buddhist practice, despair is not solved at the level of the intellect. The world has its reasons, its causes and conditions, the reasons why things are as they are, and it has come to be for an infinite number of reasons. And if we set up a kind of internalized problem that only when I can solve this will I be happy, only when I can see a way through this can I be free from my despair, we've set up a kind of false premise. For us, despair, in the Buddhist understanding, despair is an energy. And it's an energy that exists in our being. And one way that I have learned to survive the Himalayan peaks and, I would say, valleys, maybe those kind of, what do they call those kind of glacier abysses of despair, is that I learned through great suffering that it is always possible to breathe in moments of despair. By which I mean to say that no matter how excruciating, agonizing, overwhelming the despair is, if we are alive, our breath is happening and our consciousness has the ability to hold onto our in and out breath like holding onto a rope rescuing us from the waves of the ocean. And the training that we've been experiencing in this retreat to come back to our body, to be with our breathing and our in and out breath, is that survival rope. You could also imagine it maybe like a well, or someone said this week, elevator shaft. You're at the bottom of the elevator shaft, you need a rope to get out. And our breathing can be that. And it is as simple, radical, and powerful as saying, in this moment, my emotions are so overwhelming that all I can do is breathe. All I can do is breathe. And I will simply be with this tiny, tiny wisp of life that is my breath flowing in and my breath flowing out. And we stay with the whole length of the in-breath and the whole length of the out-breath. We hang on to our breathing for dear life. And in such a moment, what we are training our human species consciousness to do is to be grounded in the present moment, in a kind of recollection to ourself and to the being aliveness of ourself. And that is this thread of space around the despair, around or through the despair and the grief and the kind of landscape of overwhelm. We are simply with the breath itself. And that can be a true place of safety, of groundedness, of collectedness when we feel everything's falling apart. And this is a kind of training, and I once heard, and some of you have heard this many times from me, but I repeat it because some of you may not have heard it before. I once heard someone say that when they really want to enjoy a sunset or a moon rise, they give it 10 breaths. Because sometimes we have a tendency to walk past a wonder of life, or like these beautiful flowers that are blooming in the night here We have a tendency to see a wonder of life and to walk past it. But if we give it 10 full breaths in and out, we can really say, I'm there. I lived that moment with the moon. I lived that moment with the sunset. I didn't just go, oh, great sunset, and move on, or take a photo and move on. Really with it. And I started doing this, and then there's a next level of this practice, which is 10 breaths without a thought. And for some of you who have tried to do this, can you stay fully with the in-breath and out-breath without thinking? It is a real training, and you can do it like snakes and ladders, this training. And as soon as you have a thought, you have to go down and start counting at 1 again. And I trained myself by holding my hands on my belly. And you don't need extra time to do this. Like when you're waiting in the queue for a coffee, when you're at the dentist in the waiting room, and wherever you are waiting, you can train yourself in this 10 breaths exercise. And it becomes an extremely powerful way to recognize that we're much more than our thinking. We're a human being, not only a human thinking. And then in these critical moments, Christiana spoke about chronic moments, acute moments, and critical moments, when you are in the most difficult meetings, the most difficult negotiations, when you have the worst news about your funding or about maybe the lack of trust or betrayal of colleagues or people you thought you were in collaboration with, that is when we need to be able to come back to our breathing and to trust that being alive is already the firmest ground on which we can stand. The breath is the rope we hold on to. And by recollecting our whole kind of being by breathing, then the state of our mind will change, and we'll know how to respond to the situation. We'll know how to respond to our despair. It's like the weather of our consciousness will change. So this is a very powerful practice for being with our strong emotions. And I'd like to invite Brother Phap to share a little bit about the question of this sense of safety in our body, especially in response to racialized microaggressions and interactions.
And dear community, I think my whole journey as a practitioner has been based on the establishment of the first mindfulness training, which is the mindfulness of the body, being able to feel at home and at ease with oneself. And just a little bit of context is I never knew that I wasn't at home in this body, and I wasn't able to be feeling myself in this body was when I was in this community in Plum Village. So sometimes the most beautiful community is the most confronting. It becomes a mirror. Because when I first came here, I saw my teacher and I saw monks and nuns walk in a way that each step was their signature. And I felt that I'm not able to walk like this yet. And a big part of it was realizing that I haven't accepted myself. And this is a deep looking, because our path of Zen, first of all, is the way in. But most of it, I was just training the way out. I was just looking for a way out. And for me, I was bypassing one of the biggest pain is this deep inferiority complex in me. And there was a moment in this Hamlet here when I was taking steps, and I saw an approach of 3 brothers coming towards me. and I froze, and I went into turtle mode, and I felt like I wanted to hide. And that was a moment of, I can call it my baby awakening. And I said, what is it that I am hiding from? In that moment, I saw so many layers that is present from the past and to the present, and then even projecting to the future. So when we say in the third noble truth, it is okay, it means it is okay to be not okay. And for me, it was okay for me to feel small in that moment. It was okay for me to honor the pain that I have received as a child. I was able to accept all of the discrimination that I have received and to really be there with it, to really acknowledge that I have experienced abuse, I have experienced violence, I have experienced racial discrimination. And in that moment, when I was able to hold that, this is where we speak of the agency of a practitioner. I have the agency to be with it. And being with it, yes, I accepted I was feeling inferior. I was feeling discriminated. But then in that moment, in the present moment, I have a new opportunity. I've learned to accept who I am. And I really stood there, and I put my hand on my belly, and I said, the past experience have taught me what discrimination and pain is. But what I have learned in this moment is that I have the potential, I have the seed of understanding and of seeing. And I was seeing in this moment, I'm not inferior. I am a miracle of this life. My parents have given me this body. I am in this community where there is those who are training to transform their discrimination, so I can start to recognize the goodness that are being present for me. And I'm unlearning all of the experience that I have received from the past. I'm not neglecting it, but I'm unlearning that in this present moment, there are other wonderful conditions and seeds that are being generated in myself. And if I look deeply, I can also see it in my community. And when I first was a monk, whenever I would walk the town of Bergerac or Saint-Foy-la-Grande, I can never look up. I would always look down, because the way people were looking at us was very discriminative. We were like aliens at Leclerc. And sometimes it is views of, it's just a perceptions that we are also creating in our own mind of how they're looking at us. But nevertheless, for me, that was very real. And I was for many years still under the spell of allowing my mind to create these perceptions, and my receiving of these signals to define me. And when I really focus back on walking, presence, and how I show up, I realize that nobody can take the beauty that is in me. Nobody can take away my heritage, my roots. And I started to own up to it. Yes, I am a Vietnamese, born in Vietnam. My father was a boat person. We didn't have enough. I went to ESL. They thought my English wasn't good enough. I had so many complexes of never enough. But in this moment of unlearning and relearning, that actually, you know what? I have a smile. Nobody can take that away. I have a presence that I am accepting myself. I can accept others. Nobody can take that away. The discrimination that I have received, if I look deeply in myself, I also have that discrimination. There are moments that my discrimination I also projected toward my brothers, my sisters, my siblings, my community. And I can see the pain that I have received if I don't accept it, and if I don't bring it into my awareness of mindfulness in order to transform it. And when we speak on transformation, it doesn't mean that we go from one extreme to the next. I still have scars. I still have pain. And when the question was asked in me, the pain was there. Oh, even in this community, we can still feel discriminated. But this phenomena and this phenomena of suffering, of separation, is at the core of what we are transforming every day. We are transforming not intellectually, but in our own hearts, in our own way of showing up for the pain, even the discrimination between suffering and happiness, well-being and ill-being. How do we bridge these two? How do we see it as an ingredient? Our teacher have said one time, if you know how to suffer, you will suffer much less. So if I know how to be with the feeling of discrimination, I can find ways so that I can be free from that. And my insight was, this body is not just mine, but this body is also mine, which means all the conditions that have come together have given me this body. My ancestors, the environment, the community, and I have my responsibility to nurture it, to heal it, to be with it. And in this body, I'm also transmitting, I'm also giving to the future. So all the pain and all of the discrimination that I have received, I make a vow every day to keep transforming it. Because my way of showing up, my way of being, it is already a process of healing. It is already building a new culture, because I can be in my own skin and I can be with it with full confidence. Every day I remind myself to be at home in this body. Every day I remind myself that I am a miracle of life. And one friend has come up and shared that, brother, I appreciate your presence and your smile. And I said, it's a victory smile. It's taking time. is taking time to have this smile, because I am okay with everything that I have received. I am okay with everything that I am experiencing in this present moment, even with the pain, because now I can be with it. And when we say we be with it, we can channel it. I have this, this inner child that is very wounded. If Phap today would look back at Phap 10 years ago, I would never be able to speak like this. Because that child that was wounded was told he was never enough. And a part of me even trying to be on here is trying to tell myself I am enough. So in this moment of practicing and of journaling, journeying through this path of when shit hit the fan. Shit hits the fan almost every day, to be honest. And what we're gonna do when shit hits the fan is we're gonna sit together and we're gonna come back and look at the shit together. You know, the transformation hall that we have in front of the linden tree, it was full of shit when Upper Hamlet was bought. It was a cow barn. And Tai, our teacher, with the first generation of PVers, not monastic, but many lay people, Tai didn't wait for a meditation hall to meditate. He's like, everybody grab your shovel, and we're gonna go in, embrace the shit, and we're gonna shovel the shit out. And we're gonna see that this manure, for language, better language, right speech, this manure is gonna be the ingredient for this garden that we are all now enjoying. And Tai said, just like that, my community, don't be afraid of the manures that are present. But if you look at it in a way to see it as nutriments, to build our understanding and to build our capacity of seeing what it can be transformed into, we have potential. That's when we can say, I see the root and I can see a transformation of the suffering. And that's why Tai gave that hall the name Transformation Hall. Because we're on a continuous journey of transforming. So my answer to our friend over there, what to do when shit hits the fan. We aspire, one of the core pulse that we want to keep in our community is there enough siblinghood? Is there enough brotherhood, sisterhood, enough connection? We're not looking for perfection. 100%, I've never seen that in this community yet. 70% is good enough. 60%, we have some sitting to do together. And our teacher even said, if it's 50%, close the monastery. Look at the manure and find a way to transform it. Because we don't want to be selling or teaching fake teachings, fake materials. So this practice of coming home to the body is not just the physical body, it's also the body of the community. is also the body in our relationships, that we can always reflect and see, are we communicating? Are we at home? Are we able to see and accept our limits and our capacity? And in my burnout that I shared from the first day, one of the insight that I've had was that I'm able to acknowledge and embrace my limits. But that does not define my potentials. And before, when I started to practice, I thought I can only be happy only when we transform everything. Only when I've let go of all of my suffering. And I think sometimes we also carry this ideal that as a society, as a community, we cannot be happy and we cannot celebrate until all the problems are solved. But the first noble truth in Buddhism is that there is suffering, that it is not okay, that there are elements that it is not okay. And this noble truth is what can be a bridge to allow us to feel the togetherness, because as a human being, we all will suffer. We all will have to experience suffering as our journey in life. And so if we all suffer, can we soften our way of projecting? Can we be a little bit more tender to each other? Can we not project perfection within each other? And when we suffer, and I can see my siblings suffer, I become much softer. I have a lot of projection. I have a lot of expectation. I have a lot of demand, even for myself, even for my elders, my younger siblings. But as I've able to touch the mindfulness that each and every one of us have pain, and each and every one of us has suffering, it allows me to give more space. So this inner space and this outer space is really important to be reminded of. Another language from mindfulness is recollection. We have to remind ourselves again and again and again and again. And this is why, for us, the journey of meditation doesn't begin in one retreat and doesn't end in one retreat. It's just continuous journey of deepening and understanding our own capacity and nurture our potentials. So for me, as a Vietnamese brother, I have very deep aspiration to continue to be very at home in my heritage, in my culture, in the way I speak, the way I show up. And I can see this as a flower that I can represent and I can give to this garden of humanity. And I've learned not to feel that I have to bend or I have to change to be accepted. And if I can do this for myself, I can show up for my brothers and my sisters who also are journeying through this transformation. That's my commitment. That's my commitment in embracing. And I'm not gonna wait. I'm not gonna wait for the world to not discriminate anymore. Maybe in 100 years, 1,000 years. But in my lifespan, whatever it may be, no one can remove that freedom from me for being who I am, for being what I represent, for being what I am embracing, for being what I am transforming. And that is when the third noble truth allows me to have this, our teacher calls it this free will. This free will to breathe and to be who you are. And this is just my experience. And I believe that we can reshift the story, the reshift and retell the story, the narration of what well-being is, what it does mean to be okay. And I think we all receive a particular narrative of what being okay is. And here we're hearing different narrative, and maybe it's confronting to what we have been educated with. And a part of it is to, let's unlearn that. And just one last one in this journey of, don't send this video to Vietnam. It was very hard for me to say, I love Vietnam. When I think of all of the impact in my life, my parents and then my teacher, parents refugees left the country. My teacher exiled from Vietnam. So deep in my heart, there was nothing of love that I can generate to Vietnam for a very long time. But when I was with my teacher, I had a great honor of being with him for many years. He never hated Vietnam. He forgave Vietnam every day, and he forgave America every day. He forgave France every day. And I said, if anybody has the right to be angry, this guy does. But oh my gosh, he loves Vietnam. He loves America. He loves France. He loves this world. And he chose forgiveness. He chose love. He chose peace in his way he showed up. And in 2020, I came back to my country as a new person. It was a new journey back to Vietnam. I stood at the bay where my father left as the boat person. And I stood there for a very long time. And the ripening in me was in that moment, I can feel my father. I can feel his courage. I can feel his fear. I can feel his hope. I can feel his love for the family. And then I can then feel the whole of Vietnam in that moment. Vietnam didn't want to be in constant war, but all the causes and condition was what it was. And I can't change that. And in that moment, as an individual, I can see all that experience present in me. And as an individual, I gave an aspiration that I can be a new Vietnam. Because in that journey, I saw so many new conditions that were present. The Vietnam that I thought of was totally of something of the past. The wonderful new springs, flower buds that have blossomed through the years. These are new people. I have to let go of also the Vietnam that I have heard from my parents and to see the new potential. And in me in that moment, there was such deep oneness. There was such deep accepting. And how do I see myself as a part of this? I see myself that I can offer I can offer my home. I can offer my home as an individual for others who feel lost, for others who not able to connect to the roots. Because I can say, you are beautiful. You are enough. We are here. We've survived many moments when shit hits the fan, and we are here. And as a community, the deepest work that we are doing together is the shift of consciousness, the changing of way of seeing and doing. And our hope is that each individual, we see our potential in shifting the narration, the system, the colonialism that we've experienced, that we felt as only one path. And we have to show there's a different path. And I believe that it begins with our at home in our body, at home with everything that we receive, and that it is okay to not be okay. And the power of community is that I can ask my community to hold this pain for me also. And I can ask the community to hold my vulnerability. And I would like to share that you can also move with grief. Like our sister shared, grief is an energy. And a lot of time, grief wants to just ask us to hide away. And that I've learned that I can use grief as a movement also. I can offer still through grief. I can still offer through vulnerability. And sometimes grief and vulnerability becomes the nectar of compassion and the power that allows others to touch their grief. Thank you. Let us listen to a sound of the bell together.
Thank you, Brother Phap. And this is also such a powerful message for all of those of us who present as white or live in the world with our white privileges, either of education or circumstance, and how in this moment and in this movement we can give space and lift up the voices that are not heard and give space for the healing that needs to take place, and all of us can contribute to that. So it's wonderful. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Brother Phap, for this deep sharing. This is wonderful work that we can all support and advance beautifully together. It would be lovely to have a little stretching break, and then we only have a few more questions to address. So let us just stand up together, stretch a little bit. Maybe Sister Hien can guide us in some movements. Thank you, everyone. I think I want to say thank you, everyone, for being there. Number 2, how to let go of attachment to outcomes. I want to share something here about why we do the work that we do. And I think for many of us in this retreat and many of our beloved colleagues who might not be here, we do this work from a place of deep love and care, and actually as an act of generosity that sometimes becomes an act of sacrifice. And yet, there's this part of us, and I've seen it also in myself, you know, we kind of ask, is it worth it? And then we get to a point where we say, if I don't succeed, will it have been worth it? I've paid a price, but I don't have the result. So did I make a miscalculation? Because I thought I'll invest everything to get the best possible outcome. And then we've sort of made a contract with the future or with the planet or with the world saying, I'll only do this if it works. Or I only want to invest my time in something that has a result. In the climate movement, I think we have the language impact. And yes, and also no. And meaning this can be helpful, but also this can be very unhelpful. It has measuring impact, choosing where we would like to invest our time and energy and life force is important. And each one of us is making that choice every day, which projects to say yes to, which emails to answer. We're making that choice and we need to be strategic in it. But what can sometimes creep in while we are being strategic about our impact is it's like we've made a kind of contractual deal, like, I'm only doing this if it works. And I have a feeling that we give up some of our agency when we do that, because it's like we're doing a pact with the cosmos or something. But is that really what's going on? And I think actually what's going on is from a place of deep love and care, and not at all indifference, but real compassion and generosity. We are saying, in the face of this vast suffering, this is who I want to be. This is the energy I want to offer to respond to that. Knowing that that energy is itself an action that is then radiating. Christiana once said this beautiful line, hope is not an expectation, it's an energy that we bring. Our love, our compassion, our engagement is an energy, and we don't suddenly create it into a pact that we need a certain outcome in order to be that energy with the world. And in my spiritual practice, there's a particular Dharma door, a particular teaching that our teacher offered us in the last years of his teaching. And it was thanks actually to interviews with Joe Confino, who's sitting here, who had some very deep conversations with our teacher about what kind of awakening the world needs in order to protect our planet. And in the course of those conversations with Joe, Tai said, each one of us needs to fall in love with the earth. Each one of us needs to enter into an intimate conversation with the earth. And this is so important for us because for many of us in our professional lives, the earth will have become the object of studies. We know the ocean temperatures, we know the composition of the atmosphere, we know all sorts of data about the Earth. But really at a human level, each one of us can ask ourselves, what is my heart relationship with the Earth? Am I in relationship with the nature as she expresses herself near where I live? Are we spending time in nature in a really vulnerable, intimate, humble way? Not nature as something that we need to save, but nature truly and the living planet as a place of refuge, a place that has a living being that has something to teach us, something to say, energies of healing and inspiration to offer us. And as part of my practice here, we have many different ways that we cultivate our sense of connection with the earth during the walking meditation that many of us have been enjoying, barefoot or not barefoot, in sitting quietly under a tree, in even just simply lying down on the earth, to have the experience of following the relaxations, not even on a wooden floor, but really feeling the coolness of the earth underneath our body, the weight of the earth is very powerful. We also have, which hopefully in maybe some future retreats we can do, we have some very powerful contemplations that we combine with the movement of prostrations to really contemplate a real intimacy and interbeing with the earth. And there was a point in my practice of also being overwhelmed by my awareness of the earth. It is overwhelming, actually, to practice mindfulness of this living planet is awe-inspiring. And the great scientists say that, Einstein said it. It is that awe and wonder that comes from our mindful witness of the extraordinary living system, living being that is the earth. It does something to us. It can enter our heart, and we can see, as we heard in one of the texts, that as humans we are in relationship actually as a child of this planet. And that could be a challenging term for some of us, but actually I repeat it here because that is a door that we can choose to open. It's something we can examine, something we can take into our way of walking on the earth, our way of eating a simple plate of food. That is every plate of food that we have the good fortune to invite to be a part of our body is nothing less than the earth loving us through that food, giving us all the nutriments we need, giving us all the energy we need, giving us joy with these incredible tastes and flavors and textures. The earth is loving us in every meal. And I think we can have a certain hardness as humans, and even more hardness in the field of taking care of climate and nature. Do we allow the softness of the earth to play a part in our daily life? And in my journey of feeling intimately close to the earth, I realized, and I allow myself to ask the question, what does the earth want of me? Many of us in the profession we've chosen, we've asked this question at one level. And we're taking action, we're investing all our force and brilliance and training at one level. And I also invite us to ask this question at a deeper level. You, the human, not you, the instrument. You, the human that is a child of this planet. What is the earth asking of me? And I reached a very unexpected discovery, listening, I guess you could say, that the earth is asking me to celebrate the miracle that she's offering. To not, there's this great word in French, gaspiller, to not betray, to not disregard, to not throw it away. And each one of us is the recipient of that gift of life from the earth. And so to live with reverence for our human body, with reverence for the miracle of life, for me is like I'm doing what Mother Earth would like me to do. I'm being a part of her. And I am seeing what she is, and I'm hearing her song, and I'm being a part of her song. And there's no separation. And from that place, there is the love, there is the insight, there is the healing, and then there is the magic of solutions. And I say this because I don't think the nature of my relationship with the earth is a contract about outcomes. She's not going to be angry with me on my deathbed if I haven't, I don't know, whatever, you fill in the blanks, whatever you set yourself as your life's mission. Is the earth going to be angry with you if you fail that mission? I think Earth's expectations for us are much deeper and vaster than these very human constructs. She would like you to have really seen the moon. She would like you to have really seen the light through the trees. She would like you to have really heard this bird song that is bird song of this moment and may not be there 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. Can we bear witness to the miracle of the earth as she is now? And this has something to do with the question, how can we engage in this work without causing harm to ourselves and to our physical well-being and our health? How can we keep a connection to our deep integrity, our deep intimacy with the planet we want to save while we are saving it? While we are engaging in the work of reverence and protection and care, how can we stay in touch with our deep volition and intention? And there I feel like, at least for myself, I feel I do need to make these contracts with myself, who I want to be in different settings. And there's some real strategies to this. So, as some of you know, I used to work in the BBC political newsroom in Westminster, in London. And I wanted to contribute to a different kind of news. And I was very sure that it must be possible. And for that, I wanted to keep my sovereignty and my integrity. And so I made a very clear commitment to how I wanted to arrive in the newsroom. So I chose a stretch of my walk across London when I said, I will walk as a free person, my full humanness with all of my values, all of my vision for the kind of world we can create. And so I had this few 100-meter stretch where I really walked in full presence and freedom through the city of London on my way to Westminster. And then there were 6 steps up into the Millbank building. And I made this sort of vow, and now, you know, being who I am, I face this day in the newsroom. Step, step, step. This is my life. This is who I want to be. I'm not going to get stretched too far from myself. And so I had this trick. And then in the end, I even, instead of taking the elevator, I even added these carpeted stairs. And I really was like, I'm going to stay very close to my intention in this. When we go to a difficult meeting, we need these moments. Go to the bathroom before you go into the meeting and take 3 breaths in that toilet and establish your intention, your integrity, your connection to your heart, so that as we go into that meeting, we don't betray ourselves. And that's how I believe it's really, truly possible to show up in these spaces in integrity. And it takes real force, because no one else is doing this. But then the trick is to find the people who might like to do this, to find our allies, the safe people that we can connect to, so that in those moments, we are all being in integrity with ourselves. We're all speaking hard truths and connecting with our real presence, which can then also give us courage and non-fear. There was the question about how to handle the mistrust and defensiveness. So workplaces can be toxic. Different fields of professions can be toxic. Each one of us, we have inside us both the competitiveness, the distrust, the woundedness, if you like, that can lead to these things, the fear, the insecurities, the need to win, winner takes all. We have those seeds. And we also have the good seeds that we've been able to get in touch with this week. Those colleagues or professional, maybe not, maybe we don't feel that they're all our colleagues, those peers in our field, who we feel don't have wholesome energies. There's an art to how we're going to relate to that. And with the energy of mindfulness, we can have some freedom to choose how we would like to relate to these more toxic energies around us. And that's also to do with this contract with ourselves, to stay very close to our core about how we want to be in that meeting, on Zoom, in person, wherever that meeting, where we see those different energies. And there was also this question that if we are too gentle, too accommodating, too non-violent and maybe soft, that we would lose our voice at that table if we're not jumping in to interrupt, if we're not cutting across, if we're not beating them at their own game. And we can get into a real, another kind of contract with the devil, I guess I could say, a bit extreme, but we kind of say, we instrumentalize things and we'll say, I'll use whatever means it takes for me to get into that position, and then I'll do the good work. So we sacrifice the means for the end. And our teacher was really brave about this. And he said the deepest challenge is to not sacrifice the means for the ends. And one of the reasons he said that is because the how, as we remember Christiana on day 1, the how, and then Brother Spirit, is the what. So the energy that we bring to the means is our impact in the world. When we say this kind of means to an end is okay, we're hardwiring that, we're patterning that into the future for the next generation to say, okay, we'll scramble to the top just to get to the top, and then we'll help. And there's a radical challenge in this practice, which is inviting us, even in our means, to cultivate non-violence, or to diminish, if possible, our violence, to handle and be aware of our energy of striving or craving and competition. And this is an art, and I'm trying to say it in a way that's not absolutist, because it's a work in progress, but it's an invitation for inquiry, I think I want to make here, which is to say that we can choose how we would like to be with these people and with these environments in a way that we feel is as close as possible to our intention and our values, and if you like, our ethics, our inner ethics. And specifically in relation to toxic other people, toxic, aggressive other people. My personal experience in this, I had very powerful experience in the newsroom where there's a lot of cursing and aggression. And I did use the practice of deep listening. And at first, it did have the effect of me not being necessarily having such a voice. But then I added in the jumping in and finding those moments of silence to be able to still jump in the morning meetings for my voice to be heard. And then I tried a very particular thing, which was, I guess my only description for it is extreme deep listening for my most toxic colleague. And because I was the youngest in the team, I got put on the desk, back to back with him, because no one else wanted to be in the zone around him, because he would just enter the office and would just start cursing right away with these rants. And one day I just couldn't concentrate on the work I had to do. And so I swung my chair around, and I just was like, no one's listening to him. I'm going to do the one thing that no one's tried doing, which is radically listening to him. And I looked him in the eye. I had my hands on my lap, and I was following my breathing. And I was just like, I was just like, give it to me. Like, I will listen. Like, no one has listened to you ever before. And I did it, and it was really extraordinary, because after 5, 7, 10 minutes, I don't know what it was, a certain amount of time, he just ran out of steam. And then he just said, what are you doing listening to me? Go and get a cup of tea, or do you want a cup of tea? And he kind of then dismissed me, and that was the last time he did this. It was the last time he came in with this rant. And then we established that when he spoke to me, I would listen. And it really dialed down his sort of temperature. So there are certain strategies with particular individuals that we can use. And also there's a real sense, kind of according to the Buddhist theory of action, that people's karmic continuation, their action, that is on them. Those people, there is both it's complex, because we have both the kind of individual retribution from that and the collective retribution, but there is also a sense in which it is unfortunate for our colleagues who are not in integrity with themselves, who are not following their deepest values, who have kind of sold out. And many of us will know many people who we feel have lost that integrity. And that is then my spiritual practice with my friends that have gone down that path, is to really just to have great compassion, because they don't have an opportunity to be who they want to be, who be who they could be in the world. So there's also a place for compassion in that. But this is a work in progress, and I have a feeling that among the community we can learn a lot from each other, and also be in solidarity with each other and in collaboration with each other to resist certain ways of working and to uplift other ways of working and collaborating. Finally, on this, there's a very important teaching in Buddhism that we say compassion is not weak. There is this phrase, fierce compassion, compassion like thunder. And actually this teaching is included in the book you all received this week. We are always looking for new solutions that haven't been tried yet. And sometimes the intervention of compassion in a situation, in a team, in a meeting, in a negotiation, in a consortium, that intervention of compassion might not have been tried yet. And there may be a fierce way to be compassionate, but also very firm. In Buddhism, we speak about being firm as well as being compassionate. It's not that compassionate is always weak and fuzzy. Our teacher used to say that, like, the most compassionate thing for a violent criminal is to put them in prison. So maybe we've got a few people in mind that we might like to compassionately handcuff and put away for a very long time. We have that right. Some people need to be put away. With a lot of compassion, forgive them, they know not what they do. Forgive them, they know not what they do. Brother Phap has already addressed beautifully some of these questions around is it okay, when it's not okay, how can it be okay to touch joy when there's still so much suffering. And there's one more key that we can give to this, which is our teacher said, as we've shared, so in Buddhism, we definitely know the suffering is there. We're very clear about that. The suffering is there and is a part of life, partly because in order for there to be life, there must be death, there must be disease, there must be transformation in the Earth's billions of years. There is creation and there is disintegration. And I don't know, maybe the last dinosaurs did suffer knowing what they were going through. So maybe suffering has been around, for a very, very, very long time. And our teacher said, it's not whether we suffer or not, but it's learning how to suffer. If you know how to suffer, you suffer much less. If you know how to suffer, you suffer much less. So then there's a kind of art to suffering. There is a position of ourselves towards the not okayness of the world and the not okayness inside. An art to suffering, an art to being with our grief, with our sadness, with our despair, with our guilt. And I think for many of us, there's an energy, the energy which drives our work, that energy of love, of generosity, of service. We have a word for it in Buddhism is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. It means the kind of the mind of awakening or the mind of love. That is what is driving our work, and we can look deeply into our feelings of guilt to see where they come from. Some of them are learned, some of them are culturally inherited, some of them relate to our identity, our gender identity, our racial identity, our cultural history or roots. And there is a journey for looking into that and through the insight of interbeing, to not let the guilt get in the way, but to allow the guilt to be a kind of fuel for our bodhicitta, for our energy of service, of generosity, to bring other kinds of energy into the world. So, as Brother Phap was sharing, the manure fuels things. The manure, the mud gives rise to the lotus. Our guilt, our sadness, our despair can be a kind of fuel that we are moving through our action. Our teacher once said, if we don't act, we'll sort of drown in the despair. So there's a kind of dynamism in our acting. We're moving our energies through with our right action. And when we speak about honoring. So there's a kind of dynamism with all energies and feelings, these mental formations that Brother Spirit spoke about. They're a source of energy that we are learning to master, to move through. And we can also have space and time to honor the pain and grief, especially past pain and grief, to take time, and sometimes in our practice now, we've been on this path for a couple of decades, a decade or two. We can take a season to say, I will look into this particular part of my life biography for a few months. And we can have very particular exercises in our walking meditation to walk with our younger self, to walk with our parents when they were young parents. There are practices also with the prostrations that we have to be able to really contemplate some pains that we are carrying and look deeply into the because reasons, roots to that pain. And many of us in the monastic side have taken a season and sometimes several seasons to look into particular traumas and experiences that we had. And over several weeks and months of exploration, we can give it the attention, the honoring, the care, the tenderness that it needs, and then we can often get an insight about it. So for us, when we're carrying deep pain, griefs, and traumas, there is the tending to, the understanding, the befriending, the welcoming, the hello. But also there's still this dynamism we want to move through to get insight. And the insight will liberate us and give us energy to be of service for others who've gone through the same thing, to be of service to the world so that our pain no longer holds us back. Our wounds don't hold us back. So there are some deeper journeys that we can go on for deeper healing to unlock energy and to also, honor the depth of some of those pains. But it doesn't need to become a sort of permanent part of our identity, because that pain from the past is impermanent by nature. It is showing up in this present moment. We learned about the 3 times over the last couple of days. The past is in the present, but in a continually evolving, impermanent way. So being with it in the present is already allowing that evolution to continue. It's not some fixed thing somewhere else. It exists inside this moment, and being with it and healing it in this moment heals the past. That healing takes place right away because of this interbeing of the 3 times. To come a little bit to the day-to-day of whether we have the right to touch joy or to rest when there's still so much suffering. We have the right and we have the responsibility. Each one of us has the conditions we have the capacities we have, and I don't know how to say this, we've got to grab life with both hands and cherish it and live it deeply. And when we're gifted a sunset, damn well enjoy that sunset. And when you're gifted an incredible plate of food, be there, eat it with all your ancestors, all our ancestors who didn't have enough to eat, who labored hard in the fields. Eat that food with them. Eat that food with our descendants who will face social collapse and who won't have enough to eat. And we live this moment deeply, not because we somehow have the right to live it deeply, but because if we can live this moment deeply, future generations will be able to live their moments deeply. they will be able to savor the morsel of food they have with all of their heart mind. But if we transmit to them a lack of care, they will have that lack of care. So there's something about living wholeheartedly now so that future generations, in the face of whatever they have, they will live wholeheartedly. That goes both for the suffering and for the joy, to sort of feel all the feels. We have to feel all the feels as much as we can, grounded in our breath and our steps. And it comes a little bit back to what I was saying about Mother Earth. She would like each of us to enjoy her wonders wherever we are, and in each day to find 5 or 10 minutes to be with her, to be with them, to cherish life. And for some parts of the pain and suffering, we do have to have a kind of strategy. For homelessness in London, what will our strategy be? We can, and there are things we can do. I had near where the Heart of London Sangha now meets, there's a homelessness charity associated with St. Martin's in the Fields. And because I was practicing mindfulness on the bus, I ended up meeting lots of homeless people at the bus stops and on the bus, because I was not on my phone. As a part of my mindful commitment was to be present with people on public transport and around public transport. So I ended up meeting lots of people, including some of the homeless people from St. Martin's in the Fields. And then somehow I got a little bit involved, and then I had a chance to do a pilgrimage with the homeless community down from, we walked out of Trafalgar Square down to Canterbury. And it was beautiful with the practice of walking meditation to spend a bank holiday weekend walking with the homeless community and having deep conversations. And that was a way that I did not dismiss or brush off some of the pain in the world while I was working in the newsroom. That was, it helped me stay human and stay in integrity with myself and my values. And it meant that I felt less ashamed walking past homeless people, and I found ways to interact in a way that felt really meaningful for me, and I knew that I was putting my resources when I was making donations to a meaningful way. But this is just one small example, but for each of us, if we find there's some grist in the oyster, we can transform it into a pearl. If there's a kind of daily suffering that we're not at ease with, we can make a choice to do something about that so that we have the peace we need to get on with the work that we're doing, the good work that we're doing in the world, and to feel whole as a human being. So now I would need some space. So now we're going to do something. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. A little reminder. I left the word ego. So I will speak a little bit about the Zorro of Zen and our understanding of action. So we've learned already that our action has 3 parts. Our thinking, our speaking, and our physical action. And the word actually in Buddhism for action is karma. So when we speak about our karma continuing us, that is something that is already happening. Since we were born, we have been thinking, then later speaking and acting. And all of our actions carry our signature. Our actions are radiating into the world. Brother Spirit described it as a wave front. We're a wave front radiating into the world. And in our worldview, from the Zen Buddhist tradition, who we are is our action. Homme est la somme de ses actes, Jean-Paul Sartre. Humans are the sum of our actions. And this is why the phrase, acting with the urgency of today and the freedom of eternity, is important. The how is a what. How we act with urgency today is what will radiate. And this comes back to the point about ends and means. Maybe the means will radiate more than the ends. Rebecca Solnit, who came to our retreat in Vancouver, has written wonderfully about these things and the power of the unintended consequences of our actions. And Brother Spirit also mentioned this, that we may think that the success of our campaign or our project or our work, our research, is linear. It's just that one thing. But maybe that can fail, and there can be countless beneficial, unintended consequences. Because of who we brought together, how we worked, the positive seeds we watered, the networks that were created, the shift in the movement that we had, even if our explicit outcome wasn't attained. And she quotes Foucault, who said, we know why we do what we do, but we don't know what we do does. We know why we do what we do, but we don't really know. We can't exactly see what we do does. It's sort of radiating in countless ways through all the people while we're engaged in the project, even when we haven't completed it. And even if we ultimately might not succeed. And I had a lot of conversations with Rebecca because she's fascinating. And in one of them, she was saying, maybe, we have a certain assumption about what winning will feel like. And we've got our very long list of our dream world. That's what winning will feel like. And then she said, but maybe actually winning will feel like losing. But we're still winning. And I would say there's different levels at which we win. To not betray ourselves in a day of work and service, that is a victory. That is winning. To be able to smile having healed our suffering, that is winning. To keep our team in harmony with siblinghood, no matter whether our project succeeds or not, that is winning. Because that energy of how we are with the team is, we are together learning how to be human together, how to collaborate, and that will carry forward into the future. So we were asked about the historical dimension. And the ultimate, which Sister Nghiem introduced yesterday. And sometimes in those moments at work, we're really caught in this, we can call this the world of like signs and forms. These are some technical Buddhist terms that basically mean identifiable categories that we all agree, human, not human, success, failure, a letter announcing we got the funding, a letter announcing we didn't get the funding. That's a kind of particular sign that we're going for in the historical dimension, a sign of success, a sign of what we want to see. And in Buddhism, we learn to transcend that and to see that there are many ways to see energy continuing, and we don't get caught in one particular expression of good energy continuing in the world. And so, the ultimate dimension can be characterized as sort of beyond the realm of signs, beyond signs and forms, labels. And as we've been learning, it's not that these are different places. These are two characteristics of our reality. It's the same reality, and we can understand it in its two different aspects. And as some of you know the work of David Bohm, this we could call the explicate order, which is those signs and forms. And this is the implicate order. Here, when we look at the world through the eyes of the historical dimension, could also be conventional science, we are separate, we're in competition, we're outside of each other. We are we may be in struggle. And when we look with the eyes of the ultimate dimension, actually it seems that things are inside each other. You are in me, our colleagues, and us, we inter-are. Even the enemy is somehow inside us, and we somehow are in the enemy. Our loved ones are inside us. Our past, our future is inside us. And our teacher has said, and what we are on the path of learning, the reason I keep quoting him is because we're also students, we're also on this path of learning, is to be able to somehow bring in the insight, the perspective of the ultimate dimension to our daily life, so that the way we are doing our work, which has all the signs and forms of the historical dimension, is all about spreadsheets and KPIs and impact and budgets and all of the rest of it, research data and campaign strategy, to challenge ourselves to also see that project in the light of the ultimate dimension. Something beyond who we are as individual humans struggling with each other. And it is not that we just sort of flick a switch and suddenly see things from a different perspective, but there's a path of training and cultivation to be able to see the deeper nature of what is going on in any moment, however ugly and painful it is, or however beautiful it is. And that is this Zorro. And our teacher said that it's by cultivating the energy of meditation and what we call the insight of interbeing. That allows us, in a certain moment, to touch the ultimate dimension. I once did this in the dining hall. For some reason, there was quite some tension in the community, and we were disagreeing about something. And as I walked to the dining hall, I gave myself the challenge of seeing all my sisters as their grandparents. So we were all walking into the dining hall with 4 people. And this was a very powerful exercise for me, because I just suddenly saw a lot of things, also to do with racial dynamics and my positionality in that, also to do with cultural values and the past that's there in the present moment. So it was a very simple exercise, but I got a certain insight, and I could touch beyond the signs and labels of who we are in this moment. I could see much more deeply what was going on. When I sat at my newsroom desk, and in particularly overwhelming moments, I wanted to stay in touch. I'd already found this practice and was coming to Plum Village on retreats. And I wanted to be able to touch into my connection with my humanity and with the planet and the cosmos. And so I'd say to myself, where are the stars, Natasha? Where are the stars? And there I am at my desk in a very ugly newsroom on the 6th floor with all these banks of screens. Where are the stars? And I'd visualize them through my desk, through the grey London sky, and to position myself better, to break out of how all-consuming the context can be. So that is also to break free of this idea that I am just this body. So in the historical dimension, we think that we're just this body. But in the ultimate dimension, we're much more than this body. In the ultimate dimension, we're continued by our actions of thinking, speech, and physical action. We're continued in all the people we have loved, learned from, and taught. We we are not limited to this body. And there was a question on the board about non-fear. And it is the insight of interbeing and a contemplation on who we are as a human that sets us free to touch non-fear in the face of the first great fear, which is fear of death. And perhaps in a future retreat, we can take impermanence and non-fear as a theme and really go deeply on a journey into this together to cultivate non-fear towards our own death, towards the death of our loved ones, towards the death of our cultures and civilizations, the death of species, the transformation of our planet. These can all be objects of our contemplation that can lead to a very liberating insight, insight of non-fear in the face of impermanence. One image we have for action is of a cloud in the sky, and clouds are super complex, as some of you may absolutely know. But they're receiving input and output all the time, and sometimes the cloud is generating rain or snow or hail. And if we visualize ourselves as a cloud, we can imagine our actions are like the rain and snow and hail falling out of the cloud, maybe into a river flowing below. And part of the training of the insight of sort of non-self and kind of continuation in Buddhism, and to not be afraid of the passing of our own body or the body of our loved ones, is this contemplation on how we are continued through the rain and snow and hail into the river flowing below that is flowing to the ocean. And we are the cloud, smiling already to our continuation. And all of us, we already have a very vast continuation in our actions of thinking, speech, and physical action. And that river is already flowing to the ocean. And we smile and we can say, we wave to ourselves over there. To not get so caught in the idea that we are just this thing, or we are just that goal we have not yet achieved. Some of us may be really holding a terrible weight over ourselves. If I cannot realize X in my lifetime, I will have failed. And this contemplation on the nature of action is to break us free from that kind of prison. The question about ego was the role of ego. Was it the role of ego? Ego. The role of ego in our purpose. Okay. Okay. The purpose of ego in the light of interbeing. Okay. So I don't know whether what you mean ego is what we refer to as our sense of self. But we all have agency and kind of volition to determination. And that is a very important energy. That energy of volition, determination, or the bodhicitta, the energy of service. And for example, we're using that very intentional part of our mind to come on a retreat, to go on the walking meditation, to direct our concentration. So we're needing a certain amount of mastery of ourself to be able to train. But we don't believe that we're truly a self separate and cut off from the rest of the cosmos, or cut off from the rest of others around us. So I guess you could say that, like, our healthy kinds of ego would have these names like volition or bodhicitta in a Buddhist context. But we don't get caught in the sign that we are a separate self that can exist without others, without being interdependent on others, and at the expense of others. There was also a beautiful question about how we relate to indigenous wisdom, and this is a wonderful question. And when we were in South America, we asked if Plum Village could hold space also for deep listening for people from different indigenous traditions. And we understand that as Buddhism has a quality, I guess, of openness and inclusivity, and that is something that as part of our volition and bodhicitta and spirit of service, we want to be able to offer to the world, just as we're hosting this group here today. We also are open to being able to host spaces for reconciliation and deep listening between different groups. So if ever the funding appears, then maybe we can also offer that space to indigenous groups. I see that we're coming definitely to the end of our time. The text that many of you have seen is a very practical guide for how we respond to suffering, this art of how to suffer in the face of a world that is suffering. And these 5 principles, how we have reverence for the planet and for our body, which is a child of this earth, that is a way of living our intention and volition in the world, in our daily life. The second principle really about simplicity, generosity, and service. How we can go through each day in a way that's in line with our intention to be of service and to not be part of the kind of consumeristic culture that is destroying our planet. And the third principle is about love and intimacy. And over these few days, we've become really intimate with ourselves and our inner landscape. And going home from this retreat, we hope that this intimacy and listening and care we can continue to have for ourselves and our own bodies, but also the people with whom we're intimate, our loved ones, our partners, and to really guard against like this struggle becoming toxic for our relationships. And some of us may have really found that it's so hard to switch off from the professional work then into our intimate relationships. And some of our anger, our professional anger, may come into our intimate relationships. And we have real ethical principles about how to bring true love into these intimate connections. And the fourth principle is about deep listening and loving speech, which we've spoken about a lot this morning, how we relate to our colleagues, how we show up with our speech in a way that's truly aligned with the kind of karmic continuation we want to have in the world, and that's a training. And the fifth principle is about what is fueling us. What is fueling us? And to really cut ourselves some slack on the one hand, and also pay attention to how we're taking care of our body, what we're taking in, not only in terms of food, and I don't know how many of you are having, like on this retreat, we're having 3 regular meals a day at sensible times. And I don't know, for those of you going to New York next week or the weekend and in your work, I don't know how often that is that you have 3 meals that are healthy at sensible times. But this is a very simple way to take care of our inner ecology. And what are we taking in terms of, well, in our downtime, what are we taking in that might be loading on, piling on the fear and violence from the streaming services, but also in really paying attention, something around news. And we say this not to make anyone feel guilty, but as an invitation to explore how much information we really need to do our work, and how to manage, like, maybe time zones. Like, maybe it's not several times a day, maybe it could just be once, very intentionally. And how we take care of our heart after reading difficult news and reports and things. Do you go for a walk? Do you go for a run? Do you honor the pain of that bad news in a certain way? And so this fifth principle of our ethics is really about empowering us to know that we are consuming beings. We're consuming a lot of different things, and some of our agency is there around what we're consuming. Thank you so much, everyone. We did our best to dance around your very deep questions, and it is wonderful to contemplate them together. We're grateful that you are, like us, seeking new kinds of solutions, and we are doing our best to support you in that. I would like to invite Brother Daohan to invite a sound of the bell, and then we will hear briefly from Christiana and her team.